What did ancient Egyptians do when their marriage fell apart? Divorce feels like a modern headache, doesn't it? Lawyers, courtrooms, custody battles, years of paperwork just to walk away from someone. So picture this. You're standing in a sun-baked village on the banks of the Nile 3,000 years ago, and your marriage just ended. No judge, no courtroom, no priest standing between you and the door. So how did it actually work? Because here's the twist nobody expects. In some ways, the ancient Egyptians handled this whole mess better than half the world does today. Let's start with what marriage even meant back then. There was no religious ceremony, no ring exchange, no official state registry stamping your union into existence. A man and a woman simply moved in together, and once they did, they were considered married. That's it. So if getting married could be this simple, you'd assume ending it was chaos. It wasn't. Divorce in ancient Egypt was shockingly straightforward, and either spouse could initiate it. Not just the husband, the wife too. In a world where women in most ancient civilizations were treated as property, this alone should stop you in your tracks. An Egyptian woman could walk up to her husband and simply say she wanted out. And that decision carried real legal weight. But saying it wasn't the hard part. The hard part was what came next, because Egyptian marriages often came with something we'd now call a prenuptial agreement, written on papyrus before the couple ever moved in together. This document laid out exactly what belonged to who, what the wife brought into the household, and critically, what she would walk away with if things fell apart. Now, here's where it gets uncomfortable, because not every marriage ended by mutual agreement. Sometimes a husband simply decided he didn't want his wife anymore and he could send her away. But the law didn't leave her stranded. If the marriage contract promised her a portion of the household goods, grain, land, or livestock, the husband was legally required to hand it over. Failing to pay could mean real consequences, sometimes even forced labor to settle the debt. Picture Kenti walking through the village square, past a woman gathering her belongings into a woven basket while a scribe reads aloud from a papyrus contract, checking off exactly what she's owed. No shouting, no public shaming. Just a transaction, cold and official, happening in broad daylight for anyone to see. And that's the part that catches people off guard. Divorce carried almost none of the shame we might expect. Widows, divorced women, none of them were treated as damaged or lesser. A divorced woman could remarry freely, and plenty did, sometimes within the same year. There was no scarlet letter here, no village gossip circle deciding her worth was ruined. But it wasn't paradise either, because if a wife was found to have been unfaithful, the consequences could tilt sharply against her. Some records suggest she could lose her share of the property entirely, sometimes even face physical punishment, while a husband's infidelity rarely carried the same weight. So the system was fair until suddenly it wasn't. And that double standard tells you something about power that never really goes away, no matter the century. Children complicated things further. Custody wasn't split down the middle the way we imagine today. Children generally stayed with the mother, and this wasn't just tradition, it was practical, because Egyptian women had real independent legal standing. They could own property, run businesses, and support a household without a husband's name attached to any of it. A single mother in ancient Egypt wasn't a scandal. She was just a woman getting on with her life. So when you strip it all back, divorce along the Nile looked less like a battlefield and more like a business arrangement. One built on written contracts, mutual obligation, and a surprising amount of dignity for both sides, especially for women in an era when most of the ancient world offered them almost none. Next time someone tells you the ancient world was primitive, remember this. Somewhere along a river 4,000 years ago, a woman could end her marriage, keep her property, raise her kids, and walk back into the market the next morning with her head held high. If this surprised you the way it surprised me, hit subscribe, because the next mystery from ancient Egypt might change how you see the modern world all over again.